I never give anybody any grief for falling off the bandwagon. I'm like, celebrate that because the power comes in the choice to get back on.
Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Turkington, and on the show today, we've got Sarah Robb. Sarah is the founder of Spring with Sarah. She's also a transformational coach. She's a speaker, and she's a mindset specialist. So we're looking forward to jumping into it with Sarah today. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to some big conversations and seeing where this takes us.
So first thing I'm quite keen to dial in on is obviously your company, Spring with Sarah. Talk to me about Spring. Like, where does that come from and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, good question. I named my business Spring for multiple reasons. Spring is obviously a very important season to me. Just ripped this band-aid off straight away, but my mother passed away in the week where all the blossoms in Christchurch down Dean's Ave, the day that she died, was the day that all of the blossoms were gone. So it was like a very pivotal moment in my journey. So spring was one name because of that. Obviously, like a spring, it bounces back, a spring, like a spring that you have. And also the other reason that I named my business Spring is because of a natural water spring. And a natural water spring filters through the dirt and the mess, and it's a spring. So there's kind of three little hidden gems behind why my business is called Spring: the season spring, actual physical spring, and a natural water spring.
That's cool. Like, I'm obviously very sorry to hear about your mother, but yeah, like some really strong ties to that word for you.
Totally. And it's, yeah, I was thinking about it for a long time before I named my business Spring, and it's stuck ever since. So many people know me and will message me in springtime, and literally they'll be walking past a blossom tree and they'll be like, thinking of you. And so it's really solidified a bit of personal branding for me as well.
Totally. No, that's pretty cool. Quite keen to dive into it. So, you work with a lot of people. What's a real common mental block that you see with people, and why do you think it happens, and how does it hold them back?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones that I see in both men and women is overthinking and self doubt. And it is literally everywhere in most people that I work with. And the overthinking is really one of two things. Overthinking is lack of action and underfeeling. So many of us have been conditioned and programmed to start living in our mind. And when we're living in our mind all the time, we start looping on thoughts. And when we don't understand how to control thought or how to master our mind will essentially start mastering us. And that's when we start believing our thoughts and all of the things, and it can be very noisy in there. So I see that all the time. And a lot of the initial work that I do with clients is actually helping them understand how to get on top of their thoughts.
How would you help someone get on top of their thoughts? Because a lot of the time it's like this terrible radio station that's going on in the background, right? And I've heard a lot of people talk about you'll never eliminate it, but you've got to turn down the noise, so you can start to focus on some of the positive elements. How do you go about helping someone with that, Sarah?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing to recognize that you have around 60,000 thoughts every single day. And so a lot of thoughts, right? And nobody has really ever taught us how to get on top of our thoughts. And the first thing that people need to know is that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. So observation of thought rather than being thought is the most critical first step. The analogy of a watchtower, like a control tower at an airport. Majority of people in life are down on the tarmac. They're in the airport, they're in the plane, they're getting confused with all the baggage moving around, and it can be very chaotic and messy. The power in observation is getting up into that control tower and creating a high level of awareness of yourself, staying curious to your thoughts. Most people just attach to a thought, and then that thought continues to control their day or their life. So the first step to creating any form of change is always a high level of awareness. And you do that by starting to actually slow down, to be able to pause, and to be able to do some self-inquiry, really, is the first step to getting on top of your thoughts.
Super interesting. And then I've got a button down on self inquiry. So, what does that look like? And how would someone go about self-inquiry at a tactical level?
Yeah. My belief system really is that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. And throughout my own personal journey that has led me where I am today, I started to understand that when you ask yourself better questions, in both externally and internally, you're going to be led down different pathways. So many people are asking themselves such low quality questions in their internal world. Why me? Why is this happening? And it just keeps getting them stuck in the same pattern. And so when I'm talking about self inquiry, I'm talking about, well, have you got enough awareness of the questions that you're starting to ask yourself? Because if you want to start to create change in your mindset and in your life, start by asking yourself better questions.
And what's a good question?
Well, it depends on the situation that somebody may be in. If we were to look back at, say, the overthinking and the self doubt, you would start to, it's like peeling a layer back, right? One question will then lead to another question, which will then lead to another question, and then you're always looking to find the root of the problem. So self-doubt actually isn't the root of the problem. What the root of the problem is usually, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable. And what it's showing up as is self-doubt. So the questions that you can ask somebody will find the root cause. And once you've got the root cause, then you can create the shifts and changes that you're looking for.
So interesting. Quality of your questions, eh? Like you think about that to other people, but not to yourself so much. Like, what are actually the questions that I'm asking myself? Yeah, that's a real powerful one.
The biggest question shift that I had on my journey, and we can talk a little bit more about that shortly, is I was always asking, why me? The more important question was, why not me? And that was the first question that then I started to go, well, why not me? And that was the leading question to start peeling back to where I am now.
And is that just trying to be really intentional against our human default negativity bias, where, we're always going to focus on the threats, the things that are not good? You have so many good things happen in a day, but we're always concerned about the one thing that doesn't go well. Is that you trying to be really intentional with just focusing on, or like almost reprogramming your brain to look at the positive elements?
Exactly. And nobody teaches us about this when we're going through school, but we have been conditioned and programmed ever since the moment that we were born by societal's expectations, pressures, our parents. All of this has been programmed in the mind. And once you understand your operating system, your paradigm, or where you're coming from, you have the ability to change. But if you don't have the awareness of that, you will just always default to autopilot, which is the strongest pathway that you've created within the mind. And so, my own journey that I went through was the catalyst for me starting to understand what we're talking about right now, because I was really in a position where, couldn't get out of bed, suicidal ideation. How will I ever get through this very, very dark time? And then I started to understand that the only person who was going to get me out of it was me.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole no one's coming to save you, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the key thing. A lot of people obviously know, like, the whole victim mentality will keep you stuck. Although sometimes victim mentality doesn't show up in this big way. It can very much show up in our excuses. It can very much show up in these small nuances in everyday life. And people would go, oh, I'm not a victim. But then when I'm actually questioning, asking them stuff, I'm like, they are unaware of that program or that operating system. And so they're falling into this pattern and they don't even know that they're doing it.
Nice. And what do you see from people that are stuck in a victim mentality? Like, what would be some of the common things that you would see if you're dealing with people in that space?
Yeah. I mean, victim mentality is very much the let's blame the government, let's blame anyone but ourselves. But to take a hard look at the choices that we've made throughout our life, it's very easy to point the finger at someone whilst you've got three pointing back at you. That's obviously the classic victim mentality. But then there's other things that, excuses is a big one, people getting stuck in fear of failure, scarcity, like, you may have heard of the law of cause and effect, but ultimately, so many people in life are not taking ownership, realizing that their choices in life is a direct reflection of where they currently are right now. Like, if you want a different life, it starts by making a different choice. Different choice leads to a different outcome. And where I got to in life is based on a series of choices. Where you've got to is based on a series of choices. But so many people don't want to take ownership and responsibility for the choices that they've made because it's so much easier to blame somebody else.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, you just basically absolve yourself of all responsibility, right? If it's all externals that are happening to you, it's not your fault. You're just along for the ride, eh?
That's where I was very much within my own life. And, you know, so people who are listening understand a little bit of how I got here is that at the age of 20, my father fell off a balcony in the Marlborough Sounds. He died suddenly. And when you're 20 years old, you don't really know how to handle that. So I turned to alcohol and drugs and anything to kind of deal with that. And the main reason was because me and my father didn't have a very good relationship. He was an alcoholic for my whole life. And so when he died, I'd been thinking in my internal dialogue for many years, I wish dad was dead, my life would be easier. And then when they actually die, it is an incredibly challenging thing to work through because you're like, did I have anything to do with that? And so my father's death brought a lot of complex grief and a lot of complex things to work through. And then 6 years later, I was on my overseas experience and I got a phone call from my brother and my mum. To make a painful story a bit shorter, she died from a brain aneurysm here in Christchurch. So, 26 years old, I was lying in bed, suicidal, thinking, well, why me? Why did both my parents have to die? Why has everybody else got all these loving families in life? And it wasn't till I started asking, well, why not me? What makes me so special? And so as soon as I shifted out of that victim mentality and worked through my trauma and understood my programming and my conditioning, everything started to change.
Yeah. And like that's so brutal. Like I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I can't even imagine how terrible that is. What did it teach you? You've spoken a little bit about it's made you look at your own internal programming and those types of things, but what does an experience like that teach somebody? What can you take from it, I guess?
So many learnings and lessons, and I'll share some of the main ones that people know, however, they struggle to practice. The first one is that every day is simply a gift. And the best gift of both of my parents dying was understanding that life is so precious right now. And so I very much live in a philosophy of being present, present in my life, present in my experiences, present in my wins. Whereas so many people are rushing through life, trying to tick the next box or the next goal, and they don't realize that they're missing the best parts of their life because they aren't present. So presence is where your power lies. And the greatest lesson, or one of the greatest lessons from my parents dying, was that I've already been through some of the hardest times that I'll ever go through in my life. And I fully understand how to practice presence. And I understand how beautiful life truly is because I'm not rushing to the goal. I'm present within where I am right now.
Yeah.
The second thing from my parents dying is really that what you're not changing, you're choosing. And I couldn't I didn't choose my parents to die, but I had full control of the choices that I made after that. And they say, you are not a product of your circumstances, you're a product of your choice. And I really wanted to show people that even with this amount of trauma and pain and grief, like, you can create something amazing in your life. You can become whatever you choose. And so for me, like, the greatest gift was knowing what I know now. I wouldn't have half of the wisdom and learnings that I know now if my parents were still alive. And I truly believe that they died so that I could do the work that I do right now.
Hey, what's up, guys? Just a quick note to say, hopefully you're enjoying the show. If you are, feel free to like and subscribe, and you can share it with your mates. You can also find us at LinkedIn and on Facebook, or check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz. Cool, that's all from me. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, there's so much there to unpack. It made me think about something I've been reflecting on a lot recently, and Mark Zimmerman talks a lot about it. He's like, be where your feet are. And that's essentially what he's saying is wherever your feet are, whether you're training at home with your family, at work, on a podcast, whatever it is, just be where your feet are, be 100% present. And that's easier said than done. And what you were saying there around the fleeting nature of life, like that just hit me like a brick in the face. With my daughters being young and understanding that time is finite. And when you're with them, just be fully with them. Put the phone away. Who gives a shit about the emails? Like, that time is not going to be there forever. So there's just so much there that resonated real hard with me just now. I'm curious, like something like that, an experience like that would sink a lot of people. That would be it. Depression, anxiety, see you later. Why has it galvanized you, do you think?
I was definitely in those spaces after my mum died. I was in a very dark place. Although I knew that there was something in it for me. Like, I remember thinking, like, 6 months after mum died, like, "I'm gonna learn how to get through this, and I'm gonna" it even makes me teary right now thinking about it, because I remember lying in bed, like, in the darkest of days, like, "I can still get through this, like, if anyone can get through this, I can get through this." The hardest thing as well is that when you're so young, nobody knows how to support you, because even, like, your parents, like friends' parents, their parents are still alive. So they're like looking at you like, oh my gosh, this young girl, her parents have both died, and I've still got my parents alive, and I'm 40 or 50.
Yeah,
Um, so a lot of people like really didn't know how to support me in that time. So I found a lot of my own inner strength learning how to support myself.
yeah,
So yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and I'm very proud of how far I've come, and I know it's just the beginning. But there is a lot of people who would sink in those situations, but also I don't believe that the universe will ever give you something that you won't be able to get through. I do believe truly that anything that's put in front of you, that it's yours to take the learnings and the wisdom from that experience.
yeah. Again, coming back to that choice, essentially you made a choice, right? To take that as probably one of the most aggressive learning opportunities someone could ever take.
I mean, you never learn from your successes and triumphs in life. You learn from the shit. You learn from the pain, you learn from the heartache. And that's where growth comes from. Is like they always say, when you're in a dark place, you may think you've been buried. Perhaps you've been planted, bloom. And I always had that on my back of my phone during those hard times. Like, maybe I've just this seed's planted for a reason, and now I'm really bearing the fruits of some very dark times.
Frame. And then that strikes to me another question, particularly in the military context. We talk a lot about developing grit, developing resilience, what that looks like, how you go about doing it. Do you think it is something that can be developed, or do you think it's inherently a personality trait?
Can absolutely be developed. It's just like a muscle. We all have the ability to build resilience. I mean, that word's been thrown around a lot over the last 5, 10 years. Grit is whatever you want to call it. We all have that ability to build on that. In the early days, I was very much taught that was resilience was about bouncing back, and I think that that terminology is still what you would find if you Googled it. And then I remember hearing a speaker, and they were talking about resilience is actually the slow crawl forward rather than the bounce back. And it just really landed for me when I heard that, because I was like, yeah, I didn't really have this big bounce back. It was like the slow trudge forward, inch by inch by inch. And it was those micro things that have compounded over 5 years that have created the change for me.
Yeah. I think also that's reflective of anything of significance that you're working towards, right? It's not really one and done. It's just a grind. It's step by step by step. It's the little, small, insignificant things you don't even notice, you take for granted. But I've said it a few times, but somebody said it around you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And what they were saying, or my takeaway was, shit only makes sense after the fact, and you've gone through all this horrendous stuff. And you're standing here now with a lot of clarity around, holy shit, without all of that, I wouldn't be who I am, where I am, and doing what I love.
Totally. It was Steve Jobs who said that quote, "Can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect the dots looking
Yeah,
back." And it's
nice.
such a banger. And it's so true. It's like, I think the best thing about life is that this is just the journey of evolution, and everyone, I believe would want to be on a path of growth and evolution. But we get so comfortable in life and we stay in our old programs and our own patterns, and it's safe and comfortable. But for me, I'm like, screw that. Like, I want to make sure that when I'm 80 or 90 and I die, I look back at my life and go, shit, I threw the kitchen sink at that. Good work.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like, do you want the pain of discipline or the pain of regret? And I can't think of anything worse than being on my deathbed and be like, do you know what? What trophies did I leave that will never be in the cabinet? Or what effect could I have had on the world that we'll never know? Or do you know what I mean? Like, I just can't even fathom being in that situation. Why do people get stuck, do you think?
I think there's a lot of firstly, the program that they're operating from is no one's actually showing them how to break free and retrain those patterns. Also, obviously, we're a product of our environment. So you've got to look around at where you're spending your time and who you're spending your time with. And that can, in New Zealand with tall poppy syndrome, with all of that stuff, like it will keep you small and safe unless you know how to break free from that. And that's very much what I help people do now. But in the early days for me, like I was in Australia, America, Bali, and people were like, why? And I'm like, because I fully understand that I have to leave the environment at times to be able to be around fresh minds and fresh spaces and understanding how other minds operate. Like we're pretty small minded in New Zealand compared
Big
to a lot
time.
of other countries.
Big time. And you touched on something there around tall poppy syndrome. It's an epidemic in this country, and I can't stand it. It's so much easier for people to rip you down than put in the work that's required to try and get to your level, right? And I've just got no time for it, Sarah.
It's like I was talking about awareness before. It's like it's a projection of their own life. And so people will find it easier to pull you down because they're not willing to look at their own trauma, their own wounds, their own way of life. And so when there's tall poppy syndrome going on, the way that I've worked through that is, well, like I've clearly got something that you want in your life, or I'm triggering something in you that you haven't resolved. And so good. I'll keep triggering you, or I'll keep showing up so that hopefully one day you'll be able to realize that all of that was helping you evolve
Yeah, man, just
and
put a
can't even.
mirror in front of you almost. That's so cool. And then if somebody listens to this and they're like, do you know what? These guys are making a bit of sense. I have been coasting and I've got a lot more capacity and I need to start getting after a little bit more. How would you get somebody started on that path? Like, what's something that they could do almost immediately to start that journey of leveling themselves up?
Yeah. So there's three fundamental ingredients to positive change. The first one is what I talked about before. It's awareness. You have to create awareness of your pattern, your program. If you don't create consciousness and awareness of that, as I said, you'll always fall to the default. So you must firstly create awareness. Once you've got the awareness, the second ingredient is vital, and it's action. Nothing happens without action. And so it doesn't matter whether the action's internal or external. Internal actions are all the mindset reframed, the internal tools. External action is actually going out there, having conversations, going and getting after whatever it is you want. Then the third ingredient is accountability. So when you create awareness, have action, and have somebody holding you accountable, and you mix those three ingredients together, the byproduct of that is positive change. So the first part that you want to start doing is that first create awareness. Awareness won't change anything without action. And if you don't have the accountability piece, then it will often fall to the sideways too. So you got to go and take action. Nothing
Yeah,
will change in your life by sitting there and thinking about it. Go and take action is the
yeah.
advice that I would give.
Action always. And how do you go about holding people accountable? So, how do you go about holding yourself accountable? And then, how do you go about holding other people accountable? What does that actually look like?
The accountability piece in my own life is I mean, it's a constant work on for everyone, right? Like we fall
Big
off the
time.
bandwagon, then we're great for a week or a month, and then fall off the bandwagon. The first piece on that is that what I wanted to share is that falling off the bandwagon is never the problem. The problem is choosing not to get back on. And so I never give anybody any grief for falling off the bandwagon. I'm like, celebrate that, because the power comes in the choice to get back on the bandwagon. We're all humans. We all start something and then fall off or do something. And the choice to choose again to get back on is where the power lies. So, how I hold myself accountable is having enough awareness to know when I'm off the bandwagon and simply making the choice to get back on. And for other people, it's very similar. Although I'm a very straight shooting coach, males typically love working with me because I just say it how it is.
Yeah, that definitely lands with me, mate.
They love the fact that I'm just like, call your bullshit. I'll call their bullshit. I'll call their bluff. I'll call them on their stories, their narratives, or their alignment. For example, I worked with them, just started with a new male coach, and he was saying like, oh, he was saying one thing and then 20 minutes later he was saying another thing. And then I could see this disalignment in what he was saying. I was like, hey, you've said that you're not afraid of money, but now you're telling me that this is that you don't want to start a new career because you're afraid of not earning anything. There's actually a disalignment between what you're saying here. And males typically can respond very well to that if you say it in a way that helps them see that you're saying it for the greatest good, not to fire up their ego.
Mm, yeah. Oh man, this got me thinking about so many different things. One thing I like there that you said was around like humans are inherently hypocritical. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all fall into that from time to time. We all give good advice, but don't follow it ourselves. That's just being people. But I really liked, and I heard something described to me around a net scorecard throughout the week. So whatever your work on area is, or whatever you're targeting to shift the needle forward, it's like, cool, on Monday you get it done, nice one. On Tuesday you get it done, nice one. On Wednesday you miss. Okay, that's fine. You're still net positive one. On Thursday you hit, on Friday you hit, Saturday you miss, Sunday you miss. Rough maths there, but you're still like net positive one or two. So that has actually been a step in the right direction that week. Like, how much progress is linear? Like, not too much that I've seen.
Nah, nothing. Consistency is definitely exactly what you described before. And that's where people have these mindsets that consistency looks a certain way or is linear. It's just not. And the sooner that you can embrace the messy and the chaos and the changes and be able to be agile and adapt. Like, I look back at my business over the last 5 years and I'm like, it looks consistent now, but it wasn't. It was very up and down, but I kept going. And if you actually drew the line, it's like one of those lines that they look at with shares. It's like over the pattern, it looks linear, but it's not linear.
Yeah, for sure. And if you look at anything in the short term, of course, it looks volatile and it looks like you're not getting anywhere. And, oh, but I had this many followers last week and now it's this. Who cares, man? Your time horizon's too short. You need to lengthen that bad boy out. Over 5 years, 10 years, you're smoking it.
100%. And yeah, that's consistency is critical for any form of success, but consistency doesn't have to be necessarily linear. The way that I've been able to create the business and the life that I want, and when I speak to other coaches, they're like, your one trait, Sarah, that you have is constantly showing up. And so many people, as soon as they're not getting the likes or the interactions or whatever it be, they drop the ball because then they start making stories or making it mean something. But if you continuously show up in life and step into the arena and play the game, like life will continue to provide you the goods.
Yeah, 100%. And we strongly believe around if you're reliant on validation to move forward, you're not going to move forward. Like the majority of the meaningful change, the meaningful reps, the meaningful work, that is done in the shadows. There's no one clapping for you, there's no one with banners cheering you on. Lonely, hard slog. And then all of a sudden you get to this place where it's compounded over time and you've got the awards and you're getting the accolades, and everyone's like, well, of course, they had the personality for it, or actually they got in at the right time, or they got a little bit lucky. They just knew the right people. That is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's all the grind that you did in the shadows when no one was cheering your name, man. And if you can't deal with that, I don't think you're going anywhere.
I totally know that I've had many experiences like that in my own life. Last year, I had a post go viral and I went from 3,000 followers to 85,000 followers
Nice.
several months. And yeah, a lot of people, that viral post, that one post, and I was like, it wasn't the one post. It was the 5 years that I showed up consistently every day, putting a story up, putting a post up, and then life gave me my reward for that level of consistency. It wasn't the one post. So I can absolutely agree with what you're saying now.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. And let's project that forward then. So, in 5 to 10 years, because we're thinking in those types of time horizons, in 5 to 10 years, what type of impact do you want to have?
Global is the first word that comes to straight to mind. And, I truly believe that I will have a global impact within my lifetime. I can't foresee if it's going to be in the next 2 or 5. I know it will happen though. And, I've always been talking about become the woman who you want to be or become the person that you want to be. And, starting to make decisions now that your future self will thank you for. And I have really started to step into the identity of, okay, well, somebody who has a global impact, how are they operating? Somebody who's an international speaker, how do they operate? Because you want to become the person and then the identity will catch up. And so for me, like, I used to be scared to tell people my dreams of wanting to be an international speaker and having global impact because I was afraid that they'd think it was too big. And now I'm like, anyone who asks me, I'm going to put it out there to the universe because it's going to happen. And if I believe it's going to happen, then it's going to happen. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit of where I've been working in from a manifestation point of view and really stepping into a new identity. And the best thing is that then you come back and hear things like this on the 17th of March, 2026, and you're like, holy shit, I said it all the way back then.
Good. It's a timestamp, man. There's nowhere to hide. And that also drives a high level of accountability on your part, right? Because we want to be seen to be consistent and in line with the things that we say.
Totally. And so for you, I mean, a question back for you is what have been some of your biggest lessons? I mean, even starting this podcast or stepping into business over the last 6 months, a year, what has been something that's been massive for you?
So many things, but yeah, I think what we were talking about before, the power of being able to operate without validation and without reward for prolonged periods of time, because particularly as far as Aegis and Fireside goes, we're right in that initial stage, right? So, the rocket uses most of its fuel when it's trying to get out of the Earth's atmosphere, and that's where we're at the moment. So there's going to be lots of posts that go unliked. There's going to be lots of calls that go unanswered, lots of guests that say no, and just being okay with that and just understanding that that is all part of the process.
I
So I think that for me is the first real learning that's like rattling around in my cranium.
and I love that because that is like the secret ingredient that you need with the first 2 years of business. And when I look back at my first 2 years of business, man, I showed up in those moments feeling shameful that nobody liked my post or nobody turned up to my calls. I even used to run masterclasses and put tickets out there and nobody turned up to them and like just all that internal stuff. But the best thing is that it kept showing me like what I still needed to work through internally and the shame that came through. And so I love that you've shared that because it's absolutely what will separate you from everybody else is that what you've said.
And a good thing, me and my business partner, Rich, he's the other half of Aegis, the better looking half of Aegis. But one thing we always say to ourselves is when we miss or it's a failure, or however you perceive failure to be, it's just learning for us. But it's just like, cool, another person would have quit today. Cool. Another person would have quit today. Awesome. Another person would have quit at this particular setbacks. Like we have a certain type of mindset and like that's just fuel.
First 2 years of business is mindset, and I was at a workshop sharing the other day and was like, "Starting business is the greatest personal development journey one could ever go on."
Totally.
And so I love that first you're right and amongst those first challenging, getting your name out there, getting known, getting the misses. But the most important thing that I'd also share with you is always celebrate the wins, especially the small wins.
Yeah,
And
man.
they compound. I look back and like I've got this box of like little notes that clients used to send me, and I print out all my testimonials. And on the hard days when I'm like, oh, can I really do this? I'll go and pick up my little box and go and read through the lives that I've helped and the people that I've helped and just refuel myself and celebrate the wins.
So good. And we're going to finish up, but what's the message? People have been listening to us rabbit on for a little while now. What's the message? What's the one thing you want them to step away with?
The one message I want to leave you with today is that you are not a product of your circumstances, you're a product of your choice. And if you want a different outcome in life, it starts by making a different choice. People always say that, but are you actually creating and making choices in your life right now in alignment with the person that you want to become? Because if you want change in your life, it starts by creating different choices, and becoming the person that you want to be.
So good. And how can people find you? How do people find Sarah Robb?
Yeah, good question. A few different channels you can find me on. So my LinkedIn is Sarah Robb. My Instagram is Spring with Sarah. Those would be the two main channels. Find me on one of those. And if you're ever in the O3 Christchurch, also feel free to flick me a message. I'm a sucker for a flat white.
Yeah, nice. That's a good thing to know. Oh, good. Sarah Robb, you're a champion, mate, and we've really enjoyed this chat. Thanks heaps for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Cool. And if that landed with you guys, then you can check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz, or you can follow us on LinkedIn or on Facebook. That's all from us today. Catch you later.